Jiraiya versus Kisame. Let's do this! The first thing we have to get out of the way when talking about this fight is Kisame's statement about Jiraiya in part 1, where he seems scared of Jiraiya, saying he couldn't take on Jiraiya because he is a Legendary Sannin, while Kisame himself is only one of the Seven Ninjas Swordsmen of the Mist. That statement implies that Kisame is far below Jiraiya. Itachi also kinda agrees with him, but naturally Itachi had 1,000 ulterior motives to do so, leading Kisame on to think that, which I've already made a video about. Nevertheless, statements are always superseded by feats, and there are plenty of feats that easily debunk this statement by Kisame that he would be no match for Jiraiya. It's actually pretty easy to get a direct comparison between these two characters in terms of scaling in the following way. Kisame destroyed Killer Bee. Killer Bee destroyed Sasuke, and a weaker version of Sasuke destroyed Orochimaru, who is relative to Jiraiya. You could argue that Orochimaru was weaker when he fought Sasuke, but the difference between power between Bee and that Sasuke is so great that Orochimaru being any stronger wouldn't even make a difference whatsoever. So Kisame, who defeated Bee, would be much superior to that in terms of direct scaling. Kisame was casually throwing hands and eventually defeated version 2B very easily, while we know Jiraiya could barely subdue version 2 Naruto with 4 tails. And bear in mind, B, when fighting Kisame, was using 8 tails for his version 2, meaning he was at least twice as powerful as Naruto, and he could also control his power, unlike Naruto, who was just a loose cannon. You could also argue that Jiraiya wasn't going all out against Naruto because he didn't have killing intent, but you must remember that Kisame wasn't going all out against B either because he didn't want to kill him either. He had to capture the 8 tails, and that's why he couldn't kill him. So the argument that Jiraiya was not going all out is utterly irrelevant here because the same thing applies to Kisame, and he defeated a much stronger opponent. So, knowing all this, anyone who says Jiraiya is simply superior to Kisame just because of that statement is just not being honest. Remember, this is an analysis of who would win a hypothetical fight, not the best character or who you like better. So, we have to remain unbiased. There are some plausible explanations as to why he thought he couldn't fight Jiraiya in part 2. Explanation number 1. The reputation of the Sannin is actually much greater than their actual power, and that's because Hanzo really hyped them up for surviving a battle against him, and he wanted to look good against the 3 Sannin, so he actually made them look even better than they were. And if you actually look at their fight, the 3 Sannins were very tired and Hanzo was just fine when the battle ended. So yeah, maybe they weren't as strong at that point, but their reputation just scaled so greatly because of Hanzo's wanking that they got very famous, and now people just think they are much stronger than they actually are. Explanation number 2. Kisame got stronger during the time skip, which is also very reasonable to assume. Kisame was 29 in part 1, meaning that he could still develop new abilities and become stronger because, 29 years old is essentially the peak of your abilities, and you can also develop things during that time. Explanation number 3, and this one is more out of universe, but Kishimoto retconned the power ceiling of the Naruto world, meaning that in part 1, he meant characters like Jiraiya to be much closer to the top tiers of the verse than they ended up being in the end of the series. And then, when Shippuden came along, the power creep started to set in, and because Kisame lived further than Jiraiya, his powers would also have to accompany the power scaling levels of the entire series for him to remain relevant. Regardless of the reason Kisame thought that, basing this entire versus battle in that statement is completely incorrect. With that out of the way, make sure you subscribe to this channel and like the video if you enjoy content like this, and if you want to make me smile too. Now let's compare the characters' feats and abilities, starting with speed. Jiraiya doesn't have any relevant speed feats in base. He's not a speedster, but he's not slow either. He is relative to Orochimaru, who is relative to Old Hiruzen and the Four Tails version 2 QB as well. In Sage Mode, however, he definitely gets faster, being able to kick the human path twice, but still he was by no means running circles around the paths of pain in Sage Mode, and most of the Konoha ninjas were relative in speed to the pain body, so I don't really think Jiraiya is that impressive in Sage Mode. Kishimoto's best attempt to show Jiraiya's speed was against the Preta Path, when Jiraiya tried to blitz him with the massive Rasegan, but the Preta Path kinda reacted it very easily and just absorbed it. The human path also reacted to Jiraiya's punch through the shared field of view, and so on. So it's not like Jiraiya was definitely outspeeding the paths of pain. He was probably faster, but they were still keeping up just fine. Now for Kisame's speed, he was easily keeping up with Team Guy with his 30% chakra body double, and could also react to Killer B, which is probably his most impressive speed feat. First, he was easily able to block base B's attacks while B had help from the raccoon guy. Then he, in the most casual way possible, evaded version 1B with all 8 tails, an attack that B himself stated that only the 4th Raikage managed to avoid before when he tried that on Sasuke, which means you need a pretty insane level of speed to do so, and Kisame did that just fine while absorbing B's chakra. In the meantime, Kisame then reacted to version 2B with all 8 tails as well. Although he got hit by the lariat, he was still able to react to it and absorb enough chakra to return B to his version 1 state. And some people mentioned that Kisame was blitzed by the double lariat, but don't forget that that was actually White Zetsu posing as Kisame, and that is not indicative at all of Kisame's actual speed and reaction time. Furthermore, when you consider Kisame's swimming speed, he is probably the fastest character in the series underwater. When he fused with Samehada, he was literally speed blitzing version 2B with 8 tails. His swimming speed might not seem relevant at first glance because most fights don't happen underwater in Naruto, but it becomes extremely relevant when Kisame is involved, saying that he can literally summon an entire lake in the battlefield without breaking a sweat. Going by these feats, Kisame is very much faster than Jiraiya, but speed probably won't be the deciding factor here, at least when we're not talking about a battle underwater. Let's take a look at strength. Jiraiya doesn't really have a lot of strength feats in base as well, but he kicks and punches pretty hard in Sage Mode. Though the paths of pain were able to block Sage Mode Jiraiya's punches many times with static blocks, which are much more difficult to pull off for the defender because you just have to exert much more force to stop the incoming blow than, for example, a deflective block. Just imagine the paths of pain trying to block Tsunade's or Raikage's punches directly in the same way they did with Jiraiya. They would just punch through them and obliterate Pain's defenses, and that's exactly what happened when Sage Mode kicked the Diva path, the strongest path of pain. Kisame is also strong, but not insanely physically strong. He was toying with Asuma in part 1, being able to almost overwhelm his defenses with only the tip of Samehada, but the thing about Kisame is that he gets a lot stronger the more chakra he gets, so his strength definitely fluctuates depending on how much chakra he's absorbed. But we can see that his base strength is enough to impress a high-level Jonin. Overall, I think Sage Mode Jiraiya is physically stronger than base Kisame, but their strength levels can definitely become much more evenly matched the more chakra Kisame absorbs. Now let's talk about durability. Yeah, this one is actually pretty easy. Jiraiya gets his arm blown off by the Asura path, and he is easily skewered by the pain rods, all that on Sage Mode by the way. So yeah, his durability is not great. Kisame, on the other hand, survived a direct hit from a Hirudora, 7 Gates guy, most powerful attack, which punches harder than many Bijudamas out there by the way. Just look at the size of the explosion Kisame survived, it's bigger than the island they were in. Hirudora also did this to Madara Susanoo. It looked like a ragdoll, and it is implied that the Hirodora actually destroyed Madara Susanoo because the next time we see Madara, he's no longer in it. Regardless, the Hirodora took Edo Madara out of the fight for a couple of minutes, which is an amazing feat, and Kisame survived that. He was way below his maximum power in the final fight against Guy, and then he tanked Hirodora and still had enough chakra to devour himself with his sharks. That's an insane durability feat if you ask me. He also tanks a version 2B Lariat. He takes some damage, sure, but he just laughs it off, and he regenerates. Yes, Kisame can regenerate using Samehada's chakra, which massively increases his survivability against any powerful attacks. So yeah, Kisame's durability absolutely eclipses Jiraiya's. Now let's talk about their powers. Kisame enters the fight with a glaring advantage, seeing he is the most powerful water style user in the series, and Jiraiya is primarily a fire style user. I don't think I have to explain why water is a hard counter to fire. So essentially Jiraiya's fire style arsenal would be useless, including his oil wind fire sage mode combo. Kisame would completely negate that with massive water style jutsus. Kisame's water style attacks, on the other hand, are very powerful and could be a grave threat to Jiraiya. The 5 sharks that regenerate could be a lot of trouble. His shark bombs and mini sharks are also very powerful. I think Jiraiya's best option here would be to use his large toad summons to protect himself, but that brings in another massive problem. The more summons Jiraiya brings to the battlefield, the more chakra he'll be giving for free to Kisame for him to feast on, which takes me to my next point. Kisame is overall a terrible match for Jiraiya. Kisame loves to fight opponents with a large chakra pool, absorbing their chakra and using it to become even more powerful. And Jiraiya has a lot of chakra. Also, if we take into account Jiraiya's fastest jutsu, for example, which is the Sage Art Hair Needle attack, the animal path easily reacted to it by summoning a shield, so Kisame, who could react to a powered up version 2 Killer Bee, would easily be able to create a water wall in time to defend himself from that. And even if he were to get hit by those needles, I think that the guy who tanked a Hirodora wouldn't really feel that, really. Okay, so what's Jiraiya's most powerful jutsu? Well, that would be the massive Rasegan, at least in terms of raw strength, and it would be useless against Kisame. First, because Kisame could create a lot of water to just stop Jiraiya's momentum and block the Rasegan, or even better, he could use his water shark missile, the one he shot against Hirodora, to absorb the massive Rasengan and strike back at Jiraiya with the increase in power provided by the Rasengan's chakra. And yes, that's how the jutsu works. That shark missile absorbs every ninjutsu in its path and grows larger and more powerful. It didn't work against Hirodora because Hirodora is not a ninjutsu ability. It is literally Guy's physical manifestation of power, and that's why it beat the shark missile. But just imagine that huge shark hitting Jiraiya, especially if it absorbed anything on its path along the way. Jiraiya would be blown to bits. I mean, he couldn't take a punch from the Asura path and he already lost his arm. Imagine what that shark would do to him. But even so, if Kisame were to get hit by it, which is extremely unlikely, that wouldn't be enough to take him down because he could tank a Hirodora, which is far more powerful than a massive Rasengan. And I mean it, much, much more powerful. And if you don't believe me by just seeing the difference in the force those two jutsus create upon impact, we have a direct point of comparison between Hirodora and a massive Rasengan, and that is Madara Susanoo. You see, Madara tanked Naruto's massive Rasengan, a much more powerful Naruto than Jiraiya ever was, while Madara himself was being thrusted upwards by Tsuchikage's Earth style, increasing the power of the massive Rasengan. And Madara tanked that massive Rasengan with his ribcage, and the ribcage took absolutely no damage. Hirodora, on the other hand, swallowed and tossed Madara's corporeal Susanoo around. So yeah, the difference of power between these two attacks is gargantuan, meaning that Kisame would probably shrug off a direct hit from a massive Rasengan. A lot of people also love to bring up Jiraiya's swamp attack as his trump card, saying it could one-shot a lot of things. I've heard many weird claims about Jiraiya's swamp attack, Yuminuma. It's just very strange that Jiraiya only used that jutsu once, and against clumsy massive snakes that are not very fast. If this jutsu was so strong, why wouldn't he use it more? Well, because a fast enough opponent could just react to it and jump away, or even if you get engulfed by it, it's mud. Regular people can literally escape mud pits, so a trained ninja with magical powers can definitely do it as well. If Kisame got caught by it, he would just summon an entire lake and completely disperse the mud. Not much to it really. Kisame, by the way, was able to summon that gigantic sphere of water, fusing with Samehada and blitzing everything in there. He could also sense everything inside of that water bubble. So he could easily blitz Sage Mode Jiraiya in that water bubble, absorbing absolutely anything Jiraiya throws at him, and also killing any large summons Jiraiya tries to use along the way. Seriously, Jiraiya's only chance to survive that combo would be to reverse summon away, leaving the battlefield entirely, and in my book, retreating after being forced to by your opponent constitutes a loss as well. Just not looking very good for Jiraiya here, but he still has a couple more jutsus up his sleeve. First, he has the frog stomach, which he used against Kisame before, and that could be problematic for him. However, it's not easy to pull that jutsu off because it has to meet specific conditions, otherwise, again, Jiraiya would have used it much more often, especially against Pain. Also, if Kisame got caught by that jutsu, I think he might just have a way out. We see time and time again that the most effective way to escape a creature's stomach in the Naruto world is to simply fill it out until it explodes. Naruto did that with shadow clones plenty of times before, and I'm pretty sure Kisame could do it with water regardless of how large the frog is. He would easily have enough chakra to fill out whatever place he is in, seeing that he is the Akatsuki member with the highest chakra reserves in base, not even counting if he absorbs more chakra on top of that. And that's also a pretty crazy feat. Kisame has nearly endless chakra. He had more chakra than Nagato. Nagato, who could fight the entire Leaf Village for quite a while, including powerful ninjas like Kakashi, then nuke the village with a massive Shinra Tensei, and then beat Sage Mode Naruto. He then fought the Kyuubi, used Shinra Tensei, creating a literal moon, and he still had some chakra to spare after that. And Kisame has more chakra than this guy. He can probably summon the entire Atlantic Ocean and explode the frog from inside out, to be honest. The last relevant jutsu Jiraiya has is the Frog Song, a very powerful genjutsu. If Kisame gets hit by that, he loses the fight, as I don't think he would have an answer for it really. Unless he preemptively creates water clones to break him out of the genjutsu, or if the Frog Song doesn't work underwater for whatever reason, as sound does travel differently underwater, and that may be a factor, but we just don't know. But still, it wouldn't be easy to hit Kisame with it anyway, as the frogs have to sync up, and it takes quite a while to do so. Kisame would definitely try to stop those frogs from singing as soon as they start, and if they are underwater, it's very likely that Kisame would be able to blitz them to oblivion anyway, with his massive speed advantage. And that's the thing, Kisame would not fool around against Jiraiya. If they were to fight a one-on-one battle, I think he would just start very similar to how he started against B, using the water sphere fairly early on. Also, an extremely weak and thin Kisame was able to easily keep up with 6 Gates Guy and force him to open the 7th gate, something Might Guy only ever did against 2 people, Kisame and Madara, which speaks by itself. Kisame's 30% body double also forced Guy to open the 6th gate, and the clones of that 30% body double were able to completely restrain Neji, a Jonin, and Rock Lee, a very physically powerful ninja. Jiraiya's most potent jutsu, the massive Rasengan, would have no effect while Kisame's massive water-style jutsus would be extremely problematic. Jiraiya's large chakra reserves would also be great for Kisame to absorb, who himself has already much more chakra than Jiraiya. The only plausible win condition for Jiraiya here would be to hit Kisame with a frog song, which is not something easy to do, and maybe it doesn't even work underwater. All in all, Kisame no diffs base Jiraiya and mid to low diff Sage Jiraiya. Of course, there might be a situation when Jiraiya hits Kisame with a frog song and wins the fight, but just lowballing this, I see Kisame winning at least 9 out of 10 times against Sage Jiraiya. Comment below what you think. Even if you don't agree, all opinions are valid. Subscribe for more content like this in the future and like this video. Thanks for watching.